everyone. Today, I have kind of a weird story. It's not what I usually cover. Today, I want to talk about a very unusual object that was recovered in the Chilean Atacama Desert in 2003, and it created quite a stir of excitement, but for strange and arguably stupid reasons. The object is very clearly the dried-out body of a humanoid being, except it was extremely small, just 6 inches from head to toe, with multiple bone deformities and a disproportionately large cone-shaped head. The discovery of the tiny body was quite surprising, and many people assumed that it must be some kind of alien being, the desiccated or mummified body of some extraterrestrial to come visit an ancient Earth, only to die here on Earth, their bodies archaically preserved by the scared and confused and awe-stricken primitive humanoid inhabitants. The rumors of alien visitation swirled around this mysterious object, because no one had really studied it in any serious detail and no one had any substantial answers. That is, until now. Researchers at Stanford and the University of California conducted a study of the body and published their results in the journal Genome Research. They started by taking a sample of bone marrow from the mummified body, and they performed a genetic analysis. It turns out that the body isn't some ancient alien, it's less than 40 years old, which meant that the DNA locked inside of the dead cells hasn't really had time to break down into unreadable fragments yet. Only about 2% of the genome was degraded and unreadable due to time, but the rest was still preserved, it was still clearly readable. So this means that it's not an ancient body, and it's certainly not an alien body because it has the very obviously Earth-based 4-nucleotide-based genome structure. Furthermore, the researchers learned that the mummy is a human body. It's a female, with bone tissue that suggests an apparent age of 6 years old, and an ethnic heritage very similar to the indigenous people of the area. The genetic analysis also revealed a wide range of mutations, many of them disabling known genes with known consequences. These mutations that disabled these known genes, they contributed to various types of studied bone deformities, and that would explain her missing pair of ribs and the apparent accelerated aging of her bone tissue. They also contribute towards facial malformations, which would explain the oddly shaped head and the small, squished face, as well as the dwarfism, which would explain the extremely small size. Now, the body may have shrunk a bit due to desiccation, but if its height is assumed to be about the same, it would be 2 inches shorter than the smallest recorded baby ever born. Taken together, this entire body of evidence suggests that this is the body of a little indigenous girl who was born with a very heavy load of deleterious mutations, and she died shortly after birth, or shortly into her childhood. Interestingly, some of the mutations were in genes that scientists had never before associated with bone deformities. Dr. Gary Nolan, a professor of microbiology and immunology at Stanford University of Medicine, began the experiments on the body in 2012. He was quoted as saying, "For me, what really came of this study was the idea that we shouldn't stop investigating when we find one gene that might explain a symptom. It can be multiple things going wrong, and it's worth getting a full explanation, especially as we head closer and closer to gene therapy. We could presumably one day fix some of these disorders, and we're going to make sure that if there's one mutation, we know that, but if there's more than one, we know that too." Unquote. When asked what should be done with this body, now that the mystery of its origin has been resolved, Dr. Nolan said, and I quote, "I think it should be returned to the country of origin and buried according to the customs of the local people." Unquote.